A very good morning, boys and girls. Thank you so much for taking your time and listening to this PowerPoint presentation. Today, we'll be dealing with Afrikaner nationalism as we have been doing for the past few days. But today, we'll be focusing more on social and cultural movements that gave rise to the Afrikaner nationalism, as well as also focusing on the economic affirmative action that was established during the 1920s and also the 1930s. All right, boys and girls, this is my information. If you want to contact me, you can use my email address. It's listed there, and happy learning. I hope everyone will enjoy this lesson. All right, girls and boys, let's recap from yesterday's lesson. Remember, we were talking about Afrikaner nationalism and the factors that gave rise to the specific nationalism. If you remember, we spoke about language, that the Afrikaners wanted their language to be recognized nationally and also be used as the medium of instruction at schools. And also, we spoke about land, that Afrikaners wanted to take back their land that was forcefully taken by the British Empire when they were defeated in the Anglo-Boer War. We also spoke about Christianity, that the Afrikaners believed that they were God's chosen and their divine mission was to rule South Africa. Those are just the few points that we mentioned yesterday that gave rise to Afrikaner nationalism. I hope you still remember them and you will note them down. Remember, I have been telling you since we have begun this topic that Afrikaner nationalism is an essay topic in our exam, and questions like critically discuss factors that gave rise to Afrikaner nationalism are most importantly used in the essay questions. So please keep that in mind. All right, boys and girls, so now we will tackle our today's lesson and we will be focusing on the social and cultural movements that you know. But firstly, before we do that, we've got concepts that I'm sure you guys are not familiar with. The first one is broader bond. It is an influential and secretive organization that became a driving force in promoting Afrikaner language and culture. We also have FAK, which was a federation that was established to promote African language and also Afrikaner culture. And also, boys and girls, we have what we call affirmative action, which is the practice or policy of favoring individuals belonging to groups known to have been discriminated against previously. It is more like positive discrimination. I'm sure you've learned that from life orientation, there's negative and also there's positive discrimination. Lastly, we have the Great Depression. It is the financial and industrial slump of 1929 and subsequent years, a long and severe recession in an economy or market. The first organization that we will tackle is the Afrikaner Bond, also known as simply AB. It says it was a secret organization that was established in the year 1918 by young professionals, which we can name teachers, lawyers, ministers. They were all part of this specific organization. It played a major role in promoting the Afrikaner political and cultural identity. The main aim of AB was to further Afrikaner nationalism in South Africa through culture and also to promote Afrikaner businesses. But most importantly, it was to take control of the government. All right, girls and boys, as we continue with the Afrikaner Bond, there's this specific prime minister who supported They brought a bond, and also the AP supported him. His name was JBM Hexot. He was also the founder of the National Party. The National Party that was established in 1914 but gained power in 1948. The National Party initially and then threw its support behind D.F. Malan and the Purified National Party, which is the PNP, which was formed in 1934. Every prime minister and state president of South Africa between the years 1948 and 1999 was a member of the Afrikaner Bond. Girls and boys, there was this other organization which was called the Federatia van Afrikaans Kulturvereniging. Basically, it's called FAK, which means the Federation of Afrikaans Cultural Societies. This was an umbrella organization that worked closely with the organization that we just spoke about, which is the Afrikaner Bond. The aim of this organization was to promote Afrikaans culture. They used the following newspapers to promote the Afrikaner nationalism. Firstly, it was the Media Der Burger newspaper, which was used to promote Afrikaner nationalism, and D.F. Malan was its editor. And also the Die Transvaal newspaper was established in the Transvaal, also with the aim of promoting Afrikaner nationalism, with H.F. Verwoerd as the editor. Grade 11s, we cannot talk about AFK and not talk about this great event called the Great Track Centenary. This event was an important event that took place in the year 1938, and specifically it was designed or rather introduced to help promote Afrikaner unity and pride in their culture. Girls and boys, I hope you are taking note that in terms of Afrikaner nationalism, all they ever wanted to do was to show that they are united and also they love their culture, and also they will promote it and their language by any means necessary. All right, boys and girls, enough about the movements. Now we move on to what we call economic affirmative action in the 1920s and also the 1930s. Remember, in our concepts, we spoke about the Great Depression. So this Great Depression had an impact, a very big impact in South Africa, and it resulted in many Afrikaners being forced to move from their land and to go and stay in their cities. As many of them were very unskilled because they had their own land, they had their own things living in the rural areas. But now in the cities, they have to work to earn a living. So they had to work low paying jobs in order to survive. In 1932, there was what we call the Carnegie Commission of Inquiry. So this inquiry was basically formed to do an inquiry in terms of white poverty. And it found that between 200,000 and 300,000 whites were what they referred to as poor whites. So now the Afrikaner Bond, which is AP, and the AFK decided to step in as movements along with Afrikaner businesses to try and resolve the poor white problem and also to promote social upliftment through what, girls and boys, Afrikaner unity. I have been preaching this word, Afrikaner unity. It is very important to know this and understand that the organizations, or rather the movements that were established, were mainly for the benefit of the Afrikaner. Hence, when this inquiry gave out its results that there are so many white people who are poor, these organizations decided to step in with other fellow Afrikaner businesses. Girls and boys, let's talk about economic upliftment that was assisted by two new organizations, which were the FVB and the RDB, or simply the Rescue League. Well, the aim of these organizations was simply to encourage businessmen, workers, and also Afrikaner commercial farmers to gather their financial resources and regain control of their money. The broader bond also promoted people's capitalism, which was aimed to take control of the economy and bring it into line with the needs of the Afrikaners. What I'm saying is the broader bond wanted to control the economy of the country and make it benefit whom? The Afrikaner. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. So now all Afrikaners had duties. Afrikaner must become a shareholder in an Afrikaans credit organization. And also every Afrikaner must be a policyholder of an Afrikaner insurance company. And lastly, every Afrikaner must save and invest in an Afrikaans institution. Basically, what the broader bond was doing was all the money must stay within the Afrikaner community. No money must go to the other nations or rather the other races. Hence, all Afrikaners have these duties in order to control the economy, benefit themselves financially, and also show their unity and their identity. Girls and boys, thank you so much for listening to this PowerPoint presentation. I am giving you a task. Please go and write an essay, and please follow the proper guidelines of writing an essay. You know, in your introduction, you must state your line of argument, or rather, you must take a stance and say how you intend to answer the question. The topic is political issues had a more significant influence on Afrikaner unity than cultural issues. And then the instruction I'm giving you says, critically evaluate the above statement in the context of factors that gave rise to Afrikaner nationalism. Please go and write this essay. It will help you a lot. When you tackle it, remember the word evaluate. What does it mean to evaluate? And also check the keywords that are listed in the topic: political, Afrikaner unity, and also cultural, as well as take note of the word significant influence. Thank you so much, girls and boys, for listening to this PowerPoint presentation. I hope you all learned a lot, and I am so hurt and deeply sorry that we cannot have face-to-face classes, but virtual classes are the least that we can do for now under this circumstance. But I am definitely sure that we are going to make it, and we are still going to get our 100% pass in history because you are brilliant learners. Thank you and take care.